And welcome to Morning Express. My name is Trix Ingado. Today we shall be taking a look at what's making headlines. One of the biggest stories, of course, is what happened today, the Mashujaa celebrations, and what the president had to say on that special occasion for the nation. Also, we shall be taking a look at what's making headlines internationally and locally as well, other stories that are making headlines. And then we shall be talking about the role of youth in politics today as we head towards the 2022 elections. What is their role going to be, and how are their leaders appealing to them, and do they feel as though they have been heard, or could the leaders do better by them, or could they also participate more in modern, or rather today's politics? We're going to have that and much more here on Morning Express, so do stay tuned. Thank you so much for joining us. Now let's take a look at what's making headlines on the international front and see what has been prioritized by the international agencies. And let's start off in neighboring Uganda with the Daily Monitor. All right, now the Daily Monitor this day is telling us about Agape Ministries accused of fleecing contractors. Very scandalous stories right there that they're leading with this morning. It has to do with the church in Uganda. Find out how these people feel that the church actually did them wrong. Also, they're giving us a tally of the coronavirus pandemic infections in the region. Take a look at that to find out where we are sitting. We have been leading, but of course we are quite big when it comes to our size and population, so of course we would be in the lead at 251,057. Tanzania is still at 25,000. We have Uganda at 124,000 plus, and Rwanda is at 98,485. Also, Jovia Saleh, foreign investors fight over Saracen. Find out what that is all about. Let's move down and see what's making headlines. Also, still on the Daily Monitor. Okay, the Daily Monitor. Let's scroll down and see what's making headlines this morning as well. We have there, right, a story on vaccination. Vaccine for teachers, second dose yet to arrive, says the government. Unfortunate news right there. Africa is still struggling with vaccinating its population, but teachers, like here in Kenya, are being prioritized, as now in Uganda they are waiting for their second dose. Now, also, APAC loses 400 million shillings in payroll scam. There seems to be a theme right there in the headlines of Daily Monitor. Find out what's happening in Uganda by taking a look at this agency's website. Moving on, let's go to the Citizen. This is from Tanzania. We are told Colin Powell, first black U.S. Secretary of State, dies after complications from COVID-19. Now, Colin Powell had been vaccinated, and he was also, of course, of ill health, and therefore he succumbed to those complications. He is a man that cannot be extricated from the United States history, and of course will be remembered for his contribution in the various wars that the U.S. engaged in, and of course in administration and politics. And of course he was hailed as a great representative of the black community in the United States. Also, Dar petty traders get 12 days more for relocation. Now, commonly known as machingas, they have been given 12 days to a 12-day extension to move away from their normal business premises as Dar restructures its urban setup right there. Also, Tanzanian passport ranks 77 on the world's most powerful list. Now, the Tanzanian passport has ranked 77 among the world's most powerful passports. This is according to the latest report, which assesses the influence of a particular passport. Also, Tanzania is set to receive 500,000 Pfizer doses in COVID-19. The country is due to receive those donations of Pfizer COVID-19 vaccination doses towards the end of this month. And of course, they are faring better, I guess, if you compare them to Uganda. Now, let's take a look at the next paper, Rwanda Today, and see what's making headlines in Rwanda. Kagame, governance shortfalls causing insecurity. President Kagame says military interventions in Africa and elsewhere have failed to restore stability. And he is speaking hot on the heels of several coup d'etats in various parts of Africa that seem to be aimed towards changing the fortunes of the locals of those countries, but Kagame begs to differ in terms of the efficacy of this method of influencing or trying to enact change. Also, Sudanese protesters demand dissolution of transition government. The protests come as Sudanese politics sets from divisions among the factions steering the rocky transition from 2 decades of dictatorship. Find out how they're faring on. And also South Africa to start jabs for kids as young as 12. Their laws actually allow kids as young as 12 to make the choice on whether they want to be vaccinated or not. Also, limited capacity, strict rules weigh down meat export. That is what's happening in Rwanda. Find out how they are dealing with that particular form of trade. Let's move on to the CNN and see what's making headlines. Climate changes code red impact on health. Now, they are talking about climate change and how it's affecting the health of locals. Also, Mitch McConnell just sent very clear message to Donald Trump about 2022. Of course, the Republicans are grappling with the position of Trump, and this has caused, of course, a lot of divisiveness in that party. Find out what this message is all about and what it implies when it comes to Republican Party politics. Also, UK COVID cases are soaring, and how did things go so wrong? They have been battling COVID like the rest of the world, but clearly something is not going as planned. Also, Japan's Mount Aso volcano spews plumes of ash, and people are warned to go away from that area, of course, for their safety and their health. There's so much more that is being featured on the CNN website, including sports and many other stories. We are going to, you can actually take a look at that, but towards the tail end of the show, we'll have some of these stories given to you so that you can have a more comprehensive view of what's happening around the world. All right, now it is a relief tonight to small and medium-sized, rather this morning, to small and medium-sized businesses after President Uhuru Kenyatta issued a directive that will see businesses not listed in the Credit Reference Bureau up until September 2022. The presidential order has elicited widespread applause from the business community, which was struggling to access credit in these very harsh pandemic times. KTN's Brian George Otieno now reports on the other raft of measures in the president's third stimulus package, even as the country marked the Mashujaa Day celebrations in Waiguru Stadium's Kirinyaga County.
As of February 2021, 14 million Kenyans had been listed in the dreaded Credit Reference Bureau (CRB), majority of them being young people under the age of 30. This had curtailed their ability to access credit for financing businesses. However, for the next 1 year, Kenyans who owe lenders up to 5 million Kenya shillings can breathe a sigh of relief after President Uhuru Kenyatta directed CRB to delist them.
Borrowers with loans below 5 million and below, listed on the CRB from October 2020 to date, will not have that listing incorporated in their credit reports for the next 12 months ending September 2022.
In an effort to reignite the economy and create new jobs, the president outlined a host of economic measures worth 25 billion Kenya shillings. The fund will be channeled towards various sectors of the economy. Among them, billion Kenya shillings will be appropriated towards competence-based curriculum (CBC) infrastructure, with a target of constructing 10,000 classrooms for learners to anchor the government's policy on 100% transition from primary to secondary school education. President Kenyatta was categorical on the tendering process, insisting only local contractors will be awarded the construction tenders. 10 billion Kenya shillings will go into Kazi kwa Vijana, an informal employment program to keep unemployed youth at work, which will cover up to 200,000 Kenyans targeted in all Kenyan counties. On energy and petroleum, the president ordered the ministries of petroleum and mining jointly with the National Treasury to develop a framework for the stabilization of petroleum prices so as to cushion Kenyans against the turbulence caused by the volatility in fuel prices by 24th December this year. He further asked the Ministry of Energy to ensure the full implementation of the report of the Presidential Task Force on reviewing the power purchasing agreements that establishes a pathway for the reduction of electricity prices by 30% by 24th December. And the highlight for most Kenyans was the lifting of the dusk to dawn curfew, which has been operational for close to 20 months now.
Imenifurahisha sana ni mambo ya curfew. Sababu hiyo curfew ndio ilikuwa imetudhuru sana, especially kama sisi tukitembea usiku, sababu sisi tunatembea mara mingi, tunatembea usiku, unapata roadblocks ziko mingi, mara tumefungiwa kwa roadblock, mara ukienda hata huwezi pata mahali unaweza kunywa chai. In case ufikisha kuanzia saa 3 ama saa 4 utarara njaa.
Hii curfew ilikuwa imeaffect watu sana juu ya kufunga kazi mapema, na kazi zingine hazistahili kufunga mapema. Kama hii biashara tunafanya makaa, natakiwa iende late kidogo, ya wafanyikazi wale wakitoka kazini wanakuja wakinunua. So tumefurahia sana.
The biggest winners in the lifting of the curfew are hoteliers, transport and logistics operators, restaurant and bar and club owners. Brian George Otieno, KTN News, Nairobi.
Now, this year's Mashujaa Day celebrations brought together all the political rivals with less than 10 months to the next general election. The perceived top presidential frontrunners, Deputy President William Ruto, ODM party leader Raila Odinga and ANC party leader Musalia Mudavadi took the opportunity to explain why they wanted to be the country's 5th president. And as our our senior political affairs reporter Chris Thairo reports, the rallying call among all the political leaders was unity even as the country prepares for the next general election.
Being his last Mashujaa Day celebrations to officiate as the country's 4th president, President Kenyattas offered an opportunity for those who were seeking to succeed him to advance their agenda, to share the same platform and propel their political agenda. And with the succession politics growing by the day, the president shared the same platform with his deputy after months of attacking each other politically during rallies. They could be seen sharing pleasantries once in a while. However, it was Kirinyaga Governor Anne Waiguru who defied protocol and decided to invite ODM leader Raila Odinga to address the gathering and the nation at large. But even before he spoke, Raila invited ANC party leader Musalia Mudavadi, who represented the One Kenya Alliance, to address the gathering.
There is tremendous development in our country, and it would be important that this foundation is built on for the future as we move forward.
But it was the ODM party leader Raila Odinga who threw the first political salvo by declaring that he is best suited to succeed President Kenyatta since he closely worked with retired President Mwai Kibaki.
When I said Kibaki tosha, they said no Luo, they said Raila is finished politically. No Luo can vote for a Kikuyu because of what happened to Tom Mboya and Jaramogi. I went and told the Luos that there has never been a war between Kikuyus and Luos. That Kikuyus and Luos have been partners in the struggle for independence of this country.
However, the deputy president was quick to dispel the notion, indicating that he was the best suited to succeed his boss, given that they shared the same manifesto.
As your deputy for the last 9 years, God willing, I will make sure that your legacy and the agenda you have set of the unity of this nation and the transformation of our nation under the Big Four plan, together with a bottom-up approach, will take this country to greater heights.
Both Raila and Ruto have been angling themselves to be alternative candidate for Uhuru Kenyatta in the Mount Kenya region, given that the region has no outright candidate for the presidential seat.
So Raila Odinga is a friend of the mountain. and has been able to climb the mountain, I think.
We will ensure that nothing that you will leave behind is left incomplete. We will build on it and make sure that Kenya goes to the next level.
The Mashujaa Day celebrations also made an opportunity for the president and his deputy to share a platform despite their political differences. Chris Dero, KTN News.
Now, with less than 9 months to the next general election, President Kenyattas has moved to defend several decisions he took on issues that have received backlash as others were challenged in court. The head of state says his decisions were aimed at developing the country. The president defended his legacy while highlighting key benefits that his moves have brought to the country. Kenyatta also maintained that the government will not relent in protecting its territorial boundaries. Here's Daniel Kariuki with that story.
Mashujaa Day celebrations in Wanguru Stadium, Kirinyaga County, as the host county, provided an opportunity for President Kenyatta to address matters national while highlighting gains that his administration has made during his tenure. The president taking this opportunity to reiterate his stand to protect the Kenyan territory after the ruling by ICJ.
Not an inch less, not an inch more. And we as Kenyans say this because we are a nation content with our country's bounty and also content with the splendor within our borders.
But it's several other decisions that the president has made that have left tongues wagging, with critics questioning the same. Upgrading of the country's health system with the latest medical equipment to counties, and the Medical Equipment Services MES program, with claims that the equipment worth billions were lying idle in hospitals across the country.
Through this massive investment, 628,000 people have benefited from theater services. 587,000 people have benefited from dialysis out of the 577 dialysis machines installed, and 23,574 people have benefited from ICU services.
The president also defending the transfer of the Kenya Meat Commission to the military months after the courts termed the move as unconstitutional, saying the takeover gave hope to the farmers.
KMC got out of debt and increased the number of head of cattle processed a day from 8 to 185, 23 times what the old KMC used to process.
The president also touched on various sectors that he says have benefited during his tenure, even as the country gears up to the 2022 elections. Among them, the tea sector that he says has increased its auction price as well as payments. The coffee sector, according to the president, has been tremendous, with an increase of payments per kilo as well as increase of milk prices. While addressing crowds at the Wanguru Stadium, that was largely dominated by rice farmers, the president said rice prices have also been boosted. But it is the economy issue that has left Kenyans and experts concerned. The president says his administration has strived to ensure the economy is on a positive trajectory, especially during the COVID-19 pandemic.
Instead of focusing on what is, we have focused on what could be. And this optimism by government, coupled with a basket of stimulus instruments, is what has thrust our economy into rapid recovery.
According to his speech, the president may have received criticism during his administration, but he is confident his government has achieved much. As President Kenyatta defends his legacy ahead of the much anticipated power transition, focus now shifts to the accomplishments in the remaining few months. Daniel Kariuki, KTN News in Kirinyaga County.
All right, in the meantime, President Uhuru Kenyatta has directed the National Treasury to appropriate 8 billion shillings to hasten the construction of 10,000 new classrooms in readiness for the expected double transition in 2023. The President further called upon members of Parliament to use the Constituency Development Fund to construct another 10,000 classrooms.
Terming the CBC a necessary and timely transformational undertaking in the country's education journey, the President highlighted the key milestones so far made while emphasizing the need to make the process even better.
We will continue enriching the curriculum to ensure that our children sharpen their talent and maximize their opportunities in keeping with our vision for a holistic growth of every child in Kenya.
The head of state used his last Mashujaa Day celebration speech to lay bare his strategy in addressing the looming infrastructural deficit and challenges ahead of the anticipated double transition.
I hereby order and direct as follows: that the Ministry of Education, jointly with the Ministry of Interior and the National Treasury, shall establish a framework for the construction of over 10,000 classrooms needed to provide the additional learning space for the 1 million new students set to join junior secondary.
The President's pronouncement comes even as fears and concerns continue to mount over the expected double transition in 2023, when the last cohort of the 844 system will transit to Form 1 and the first cohort of CBC will join junior secondary school in grade 7. During that period, there will be a 27% increase in secondary school learner population from 4,381,701 to 6,029,000. And with recommendations that junior secondary schools be domiciled in all the 10,359 secondary schools across the country, construction of extra classrooms is at the center of this journey.
The National Treasury engages Parliament to appropriate 8 billion shillings towards the construction of classrooms.
The current grade 5 learners are estimated to be 1,250,000, with class 6 learners estimated to be 1,320,000. It is therefore expected that the total number of grade 6 and standard 8 learners to join secondary school in 2023 will be 2,571,000. This translates to a huge shortfall of 1,489,000 spaces in secondary schools in 2023. The biggest challenge for the government has been the creation of additional 1.5 million spaces.
To address the gap of the remaining 10,000 classrooms across the country, I call upon all members of the National Assembly to stand together in solidarity with our children by prioritizing allocation of the CDF towards school infrastructure.
Considering each classroom accommodates a maximum of 40 learners, by constructing 10,000 classrooms, the government will have created 400,000 spaces, which leaves a deficit of about 1.1 million spaces required. Meanwhile, should the MPs heed the President's call and build another 10,000 classrooms, a total of 800,000 new spaces will have been created. And according to the CBC implementation report, which recommended for the creation of at least 1.5 million new spaces in secondary schools ahead of 2023, the government will be left with a burden of creating 700,000 more spaces. However, the greater burden will now be with Education Cabinet Secretary George Magoha, who will be required to decide and determine where the new classrooms will be built. Shadrach Miti, KTN News.
Thank you very much, Shadrach Miti, for that story. And let's now get into what's being covered by the papers this morning. And of course, the Mashujaa Day celebrations, the President's speech, and all the many areas that he pointed out are being covered comprehensively in the Standard. And the headline this morning is Uhuru's delicate balance. President lifts curfew to aid economic recovery and announces a raft of measures to reduce impact of COVID-19 in a delicate balance between between keeping Kenyans safe and returning, or rather a return to normalcy. And joining me this morning to discuss this and the other stories that are making headlines is Ascon Kamili, who is a youth leader. We also have Gloria Oroba, a policy analyst. Thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Thank you.
Okay, so let's start off with the elephant in the room. That's the Mashujaa Day celebrations. We had all the pomp and color, the celebrations. Everybody looks forward to that. But also there's the thing that everyone was waiting to hear, whether or not the curfew will be lifted. And clearly the president did the needful. But of course it is, as the paper is saying, a delicate balance. What's your opinion on that?
Well, thank you very much. First and foremost, I must say it's a great privilege to join you here on this show today.
You're welcome.
And to speak to your viewers. Onto your question, I believe the president did the right thing by allowing people to go back to their businesses, because particularly considering the fact that the economy was hurting already. Yes. 1.5 years is quite a long period of time. But that should not be misconstrued to mean that you know, we should now lower our guard or drop our guard and you know, just be careless with our lives. The president is trying to you know, tell us in a different way that you know, your security and your health now begins with you.
Absolutely.
You're supposed to take charge of your health and to ensure that you take care of the people around you as well.
And when you look at some of the areas, for example, in the story that was done by Brian George, some sectors are 24 hours. They need to be running all the time. And of course, do you expect that this would actually change the president's, when it comes to popularity, do you think this is going to influence his popularity right now? Because a lot of people feel thankful. Forget about those who want to party all night. The people who are in business and who actually want to make a buck, even at hours that normal people, other people wouldn't.
Well, Kenya is known to be a lively country where everybody looks forward to partying every weekend, or others even do it on a daily basis. But the most important thing is that the president at least gave a chance to those who have been, you know, asking for this for a very long time. Those who run bars and restaurants, those who do 24-hour economy businesses. And at least to an extent he has, you know, listened to their cry. But I don't think the president is really very keen on popularity right now. He's going home. I think the most important thing that he would really want to accomplish is to ensure that he has a legacy, which by what he had outlined there as the interventions he hopes to do within this 1 year. I believe that he would be probably somewhere by the end of this term in terms of ensuring that he leaves Kenya with a beautiful legacy.
That is true, but at the same time, wouldn't hurt if the legacy is something that goes down in the history books as something that people will remember him. He led us through the pandemic and actually even made it work, even when the pandemic wasn't even over. He listened to us. Isn't that important? And even when you look at whoever he will endorse for candidacy in the upcoming election, that would, how popular he is, would go a long way. It would have a ripple effect on that, don't you think?
Well, going by the history of Kenya, it's never very likely that the president will come out boldly and endorse somebody, particularly for an election that you know, comes immediately after his term. In most cases, they appear to be lukewarm. They appear not to be very keen on endorsing somebody so boldly. But in this case, the president will have you know, made a good statement if you were to come out and endorse a candidate, because one, Kenyans will understand him, and Kenyans will seem to understand the fact that he took us through an economy which was, you know, riddled with so much, considering the fact that COVID was a pandemic globally, and everybody was feeling the weight. So I think Kenyans are going to be very lenient with him, and particularly those within his backyard in the Mount Kenya region. While other people might believe that the president might not have so much say there, I still believe that to an extent he will give a direction and the people there will follow it to the letter.
Okay, Gloria, the president lifted the curfew to aid economic recovery and announced a raft of measures to ensure the country is protected when it comes to the coronavirus infections, and then we're not having situations where we're going back to situations that we have already overcome. What do you make of this, and what do you perceive it will do for businesses and the economy of the country? Forget the party goers.
Thank you. I think the first thing that we should note is that the idea of the curfew was actually being used as a tool, because, you know, how timely is it that when the president's popularity has really tanked, is when, when we have this Mashujaa Day celebration and everything is when he decides to lift the curfew. I have always been of the opinion that just like they, opened back the airlines and people were flying, sitting next to each other in very close proximity, not having to observe all the Ministry of Health guidelines of social distancing. The moment they opened the airlines, I think for me, is the moment they should have actually lifted the curfew.
Right.
So for me, like I've been saying, the curfew has always been one of the things that, if you want to, let's say, appear to be a friendly and popular person, one thing you deny the people of their rights, and then you control it, and then you come back and say, actually, I'm now allowing you to go out and perform your economic activities, and then we are celebrating. Like yesterday was a big celebration, particularly for the bars and restaurants, as well as the transport industry that was actually being crippled because of this curfew business. So I think at the end of the day, again, you can see this was one of the times when you can actually say, because why didn't he actually lift the curfew last week? Why didn't he lift the curfew 3 days ago? It was like, I'm going for Mashujaa Day, I'm supposed to give a speech on how my government has actually had successes. We had the president talk about the managed equipment services in a positive way. And, that for me is also a thing where, how can you? This was the biggest scandal. We have a Senate report that was tabled that actually gave the details as to how much money we lost as a country. And yet it was this particular time that the president decided, okay, to cover all of this so that you don't have too many questions, I will lift the curfew. So for me, again, this was just, it's being used as a tool, a political tool, a strategy, because the curfew could have been lifted 3 days ago, 1 week ago. Actually, if you ask me, the moment the airlines were going back, then the curfew should have been lifted.
That there was the concern of COVID-19 and that now that the numbers are low, clearly it is time for the curfew to be lifted. Why do you really feel it is disingenuous? Because there are factors that were being dealt with by that curfew.
When you talk about the numbers are low, who is controlling those numbers? Who is giving us those numbers? As far as we are concerned as a country, we have not even vaccinated 50% of this country. We have not even, most of the other economies that are being opened were being opened on the basis that we have vaccinated 50%, 60%, 70% of the country, and therefore, so there's actually justifiable reason based on the vaccine to, open back the economy. For Kenya, I doubt highly, and I could be wrong, that we've actually gotten to 10% of the country in terms of vaccination. So, to talk about the numbers have gone up, there's a time when we were really looking for relief and we wanted the international NGOs to come in and sponsor us. And suddenly our numbers was very high, And so there has not been any, actually, if you ask me, the numbers that are being churned out from Ministry of Health, the numbers that we have been fed, I don't believe that they are authentic. And I think in many ways that we cannot rely on those numbers. I was expecting to say that, to hear from the government that now that we have vaccinated a percentage more than even that 10% of the country, it makes sense then now to open back the economy. So again, there's no justifiable reason as to why the economy was opened yesterday on Mashujaa Day, not 3 days ago, not 2 months ago, not when the airlines were open. So that is my opinion.
Okay, that is Gloria's opinion on that. But there's so much more that is being covered in the paper, far from the curfew being lifted. Also, we have the key intervention, or rather interventions by the president, from the tea subsector all the way to access to credit, vaccine production. There's so much that was announced yesterday, and we need to get into that. Now, Mr. Ascon, sorry, you have a unique name. Now, when you look at the tea subsector, we talk about central Kenya. These are things that actually they do care about, because this is the source of this is the oil or the grease that keeps the wheels turning. Now we have the coffee sector getting 1 billion shillings for targeted interventions. We have 1 billion shillings for the tea subsector, and also farming. Livestock sector is going is getting 1.5 billion shillings. This is pretty good for those who depend on farming for their livelihoods, and of course they just want to keep food on their table. What do you say about this? It's pretty positive news, right?
Well, Even before I go into this, I think one thing I would really want to address is the thinking of Kenyans that really we can never trust our government, or we can never trust those who are in power. Most Kenyans...
Are you saying the thinking of Kenyans or the thinking of Gloria?
Well, while Gloria could be one of them, but she's quite representative of a good section of the country.
We are always skeptic.
That we are always, the pessimism is so high out there, and I think for the first time, Kenyans should find a reason to, trust their government and to, be sure that the government will do something about the state of the economy. But having said that, look at the tea sector and the coffee sector and the sugar sector. The president has committed a lot of money into this, considering that the country or our economy is an agro-economy, where largely we depend on agriculture. These are quite beautiful and good interventions that really, if followed properly, then we'll see changes. And look at it, this could not only be targeted towards Mount Kenya, because in Kisii region, Nyamira region, tea and coffee is quite something. Right. Go to other areas of this country, tea is quite something. Look at the amount of money that was dedicated to sugar. Across the sugar belt in Nyanza and western region, this has been something that people are crying about, and there have been complaints here and there. So for me, for the first time, I see this as the president really listening to his people and providing solutions to their problem promptly.
Yeah, and we are also being joined this morning by Meshach Odede. Meshach Odede is the chairman for Volunteer Involving Organizations. Thank you so much for joining us this morning, Mr. Odede. I'd like you to address two things. One, the key interventions that the president has made. A lot of money is going to be pumped into subsectors. The tea subsector, sugar, coffee subsector, livestock farming is going to gain a boost thanks to the president's intervention at this point. And also we have the economy getting a boost as a result of the curfew being lifted. So I'd like you to address it in two ways. What is your reaction to these interventions? And at the same time, do you think the curfew being lifted is a genuine response to calls from Kenya, or do you think it's a ploy to increase the president's popularity at this time?
Thank you. I would like to look at it from that other perspective, that it is not the president trying to get popularity because he is not in a contest with anyone at this point in time. I don't think there has been any indication that he is competing with anyone to warrant him looking for popularity at this point in time. And I also want to say that the interventions are good, although some part of it were not clear. And Kenyans out there from yesterday on social media would be humorous with it. And you could see a number of Kenyans are saying on Facebook, Twitter, and other social media that it doesn't matter what the president says, it matters a lot what the police understood. Meaning sometimes it is not really what was given to Kenyans, but what police understood that was given. So if the issues of bars and things like that were not clear, then it still doesn't augur very well with everyone, especially in terms of businesses out there. Like before, when there was still curfew, people were asking, why would you give some people pass and say they are essential services while the people they are supposed to serve are all locked in the house and cannot move past certain hours? So if you lift the curfew and then some businesses that are largely operating at night are still not clear whether they should continue and go on opening throughout the night or not, is not clear, then we do not really know what that means in terms of bringing back the economy. Given the few other things that he mentioned that should be happening, that is a welcomed idea because it will really pump money. He talked about the part of infrastructures that are still coming. Yeah. And for me, the catchy point was about his mention and articulation around the local contractors, because this is where money should come to local people And through those contractors, there will be a lot of employment, even if they are not so permanent, but it will be bringing food on the table for Kenyans. Yes.
Indeed. Now, we have, that is Mesha Kodede, Chairperson Volunteers in Industries. We have Gloria Roba, also policy analyst, as well as Ascon Kamili, who is a youth leader. We have a very youthful panel this morning that's going to help us talk about these and other stories that are making headlines. We are going to take a short break. When we come back, we shall look at other interventions. The Standard newspaper has a comprehensive coverage of this all the way from page 3 all the way to page 11 this morning. So grab yourself a copy. But of course, we're going to be touching on these and many other stories that are making headlines this morning. Do stay tuned to Morning Express.